Okay, Hilchos Matanas Aniyim, Perek Zayin, page 586 in the Rambam. This Perek begins to deal with the halachas of tzedakah. After the Rambam explained the halachas of what you give to the poor from the agriculture, he goes on to the mitzvah of tzedakah from a monetary perspective. Halacha Aleph. There's a positive mitzvah to give tzedakah, which we usually translate as charity or etc., to poor people. As is appropriate for the poor person. In other words, what's appropriate? Because of the poor person, we'll see. Assuming the person who's giving has enough, right? If a person can't afford to give, he's not mechuyev. But if he can afford to give, he has mitzvah to give. Shemar, it says, afford. Yeah, we'll all go through all those things. Yeah, don't worry. Yeah. Before we're talking about agriculture, now we're talking about other things. Yeah. In the first halacha, the Ram can't say everything. That's why he has the whole parak. You got to be patient. By now we should know this already, right? It says, you should surely open your hand for him. It says, that pasuk is in the Devarim, and it says in Vayikra, you should strengthen or support the ger, the convert, the toishav, and the resident, meaning a guy who keeps Sheva mitzvahs and therefore can it's a mitzvah to provide for him too. He should live together with you.
This is outside of Aniyas.
No, they're just talking about a poor person.
Yeah, who they are.
A wealthy ger, you don't have to get tzedakah to.
Oh, so you're saying it's
the Rambam is bringing psukim to back up the mitzvah. The mitzvah gets tzedakah. So says where? Says here.
You might think it's only a year.
Right. Yeah. Well, exactly. Yeah. Then when it says your brother should live with you, the Torah gives examples of a ger and a ben noyach because they don't have a lot of social connections. It's very common to be poor. So therefore, a ger doesn't have his ancestral heritage. Right, he doesn't have a family business. Good. Okay, base. Any person sees a poor person asking for tzedakah, which Pashtush means that he's asking you. Right, not something you see him walking around collecting. The hell of many men, then you when he asks you pretend not to see and you turn away. But that's tzedakah, you don't give him tzedakah, and you can if you're able to. All while but say that transgressed the say him Hashem. It says you should not harden your heart. Don't close your hand. From your poor brother. So there's a mitzvah, there's a lav to refrain giving tzedakah from a poor person if you're able to give him, and he asks you. That's how he says pshat over here based on the Rogan Shavar. That if you seem like someone else, you go behind the mechitza, so you're not doing the asay of tzedakah. You're not open the lav. The lav is if he asks you and you pretend you're a shemester and you don't answer him, you turn away. Gimel. The female shech. You tell him you don't have. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So good. Same thing. You can the same also. Yeah, right. Good. Gimel. Now, again, this is not talking about necessarily a person, a fundraiser.
I know. For some reason you want to hide.
Now, exactly, what's together of an ani and what situation where you're mechuyev? What if there's a lot of people in the shul? I have to give him everything after? He needs $100 to buy food today. I have to give all of it? So we'll see. There's all things that are broken down. Gimel. This is a fun halacha. Based on what the ani is lacking, you are obligated to give him. If he doesn't have clothing, give him clothing. If he doesn't have basic utensils in the house, again, we're assuming what together of basic necessities is depends on time and place, right? Currently, you buy it for him. He doesn't have a wife. Masina help him get married. He can't afford to make a wedding. That's part of the verse. Because you can't create a wedding, right? He's a poor person. I want to get stuck. I'll marry her. It's not like vice versa. Right? It doesn't make any sense. Or you could also say pshat, you're helping him get married. But okay, if it's a woman, Masina help her marry a man. Which is a bigger chiddush, so the woman has no chiyuv to get married and have kids. A man has a mitzvah, a woman doesn't, but still, it's considered tzedakah for her. Even if
the man has a mitzvah and the woman doesn't.
Correct. Even if there was this person's custom, and his social standing, to ride in the horse, to the ebbas in front of him, with the servant to run in front of him and clear the path. But if he comes now poor, he can't afford that. You buy him a horse to ride on, even though everyone else walks around. The Evan knows in front of him, you buy him an Evan to run in front of him. If that was his normal standing. Now, does that mean that if the guy always flies first class, we have to buy him a first class ticket out there? I mean, is it necessary to fly? If yeah, so again, you have to ask. This is something that the Gabbai Tzedakahs and the Rabbanim's job is to establish what's appropriate to provide for people. In this case, famous Ma'aseh Gemara, Ksubas with Hillel when he ran in front of the guy, poor person who always was very wealthy, had a person running in front of him, in front of his horse to clear the path, and the Gabbai Tzedakah and the Rabbanim made sure that he had that when he became poor. One day he couldn't find somebody, so Hillel Nasi did it in front of himself, right? All right, remember, it says, the lack he's lacking. So I'm fine without a horse. Why do you need a horse? Because he's used to it. You're obligated to compensate his lack. You don't have to make him wealthy. So if he was wealthy before and that's what he's used to, then that's considered a necessity. Again, does that mean that the guy needs money because for his parnasa he drives an Uber? He needs a car. Now for him to drive an Uber, a Ford, I was always driving a Mercedes. Again, that's something you have to. That's based on but the concept exists. I'm saying the musik is. You shouldn't give the ani based on what you think is enough. The Torah says what he thinks is enough, or what Torah says is enough for him. Dalad Yasam Shabal Asir Isha, an orphan comes and he wants to get married. Sheikhim lebayis matzim lemiti. You have to rent a house for him and provide a bed for him. Chalkat tashmisha and all the utensils are necessary. But achach missing and then you have to get married. In other words, you see from the same shot in the previous halacha that's tamas they set him up. But you have to also make sure he has where to live. So you can give him let him get married and the night of the chas and where to go to. You're not doing anything for him, right? Hey. So this is the basic principle. In other words, this halacha is the basic raw halacha of tzedakah. If you live in Beverly Hills and there's only one poor person there and he comes to you, and you're the only yid there, you have the obligation to do what we said so far. Now, if the ani comes and he says, listen, I'm lacking this and I need food for today, whatever is considered his chesaron, and the person who is asking doesn't have that much money. So then you take the giver's account into consideration. The kama and what's considered, how much is that? A fifth of his nechasim. And again, does this mean all of his assets or all of his cash? It's not clear from the Rambam. You have to look in the pasuk and they break this down. Now, obviously, this doesn't. If there's 5 aniyim and every hour another one comes, you give everyone a fifth. After the fifth guy, you have nothing left. So right. So Muslim Zagan, it depends on what's the gather of in terms of up to a fifth based on either that year's salary or whatever it is. All right. So mitzvah mufchar, a fifth is mitzvah mufchar. Excuse me. So again, this is when you're the only person available. And if you give only 1/10, that's considered an average mitzvah. Less than a tenth, that is considered being stingy. Because again, we learned this concept of ma'aser ani from the fields. We learn out when it comes to tzedakah also ma'aser is appropriate. The basic bare minimum person should always make sure to give at least 1/3 of a shekel every year. That's the bare minimum. Now everyone has to give a half a shekel for the Beis Hamikdash, but that's not tzedakah. In terms of tzedakah for poor people, you have to give a 1/3 of a shekel. If you give less than that a year, you were not the kind of tzedakah.
So a third of a shekel would be a quarter.
In terms of temporary cash?
Yeah.
Oh no, I don't know what the car. I mean, probably like $2 or something. I would imagine something like that. A 1/3 of a shekel. It's like 7 grams of silver, I think, something like that. Yeah, a drop less than 7 grams of silver. You have to go to xe.com. You can always find that. I think so that's for exchange.
Current silver price.
Yeah, there's like current silver. Yeah, something like that. Because they get to know for certain. Okay, even an ani himself who's abstaining from tzedakah. He has to give tzedakah to someone else, and again, the minimum for him would be a 1/3 of a shekel. Well, now, do you have to have a team of researchers to find out who is bluffing? So, ani she'imakina, you say a guy, you don't know. Guy shows up at your door, and you say, "I'm poor," and he says he's poor. Somebody says, "I'm hungry. Give me food." You don't have to do an investigation. Shema Ramahu to be worried about him being a trickster. You give him food right away. Right. So therefore, you give him food. Means you sustain him. It doesn't mean you have to give him food. If you're worried about that, give him food. It's a big mistake to give him food. If he's naked and he says, "Kasini, give me clothing," right? Shows up at your door, wearing not much. In that case, for clothing, he's not going to die of hunger, right? I mean, unless it's 0 degrees outside. Let's say it's average weather, so you have to do an investigation. Maybe he's being tricky. If you know this person already, then immediately you have a mitzvah to give him, clothing according to his honor, right? Again, if he was always very wealthy, they have to buy him a fancy suit. Again, you don't investigate the matter. Zion. We said so far this mitzvah to give tzedakah to Yidden and to Goyim, who are Kasha mitzvahs, right? Gertoshev. Matanas Aniyim. I was once in a shul in Borough Park. There was a guy collecting. And everyone's saying to him, whatever. One guy says to him, he takes a quarter and he says to him, and he gives it to him. The guy says, "Amen." So I realized he's a guy. The guy was trying to tell everybody else, the guy's a guy. You can give him, but cheshbon, give him a quarter versus $5. All right, that's very, the guy says, "Amen." So it goes right away. So I gave him a quarter, not $1. All right. So This we're not talking about irritation. We're talking about mazalas. By you it says goyer. It says avodah zara. Mefarnasin what? Mechasim Aniyim. Goyim. Okay. So the Rambam says goyim. He means goyim who are not keeping Shav mitzvahs pashtus. Imani Yisrael together with poor Imani Yisrael, and not because it's a chiyuv, but mitake shalom, just for positive social relations. The ani shamachaza apsachim. Ani who now again ad kan b'pashas, you're the only person available to give tzedakah at the moment, right? You're the only yid in town. He's the only poor person in town, whatever it is. Ani machaza apsachim. If you know he's collecting multiple people, so ein is talking little matanamu. You don't have to give him a big matana, even if it's not going to satisfy his needs, because there's other people available. So therefore, avonation matanamu, you have to give him something though. The asal lahachsha asa ani and shasholik. I mean, now that I give him nothing, empty-handed. Afila atam nation like achas. Even if you gave him just one fig. Shemar, it says, Ayal Tashev Rach Nichlam is a pasuk in Tilim, Kapitel Ayin Dalid. Don't let the dejected turn away in embarrassment. So there's still a chiv to give him something. That's not you can't say, listen, you have the whole Quran to collect from. My dollar's not going to make a difference to you. You're not allowed to do that. If he's not going to earn. Good.
How about if you give it to him, he rejects?
That's his. That's
It's not enough.
Oh, so then the question is, if you give it to him, he doesn't want to take it, are you making the mitzvah or not? Yeah, good child. If Shem Shalach Manis, think I Shalach Manis doesn't accept it. If the mitzvah shalom is mitzad, the positive of Israel, right? You are mekayim. But if it's mitzad, so it's poor, you're not mekayim. Good, you got a similar question.
Good answer for good question.
Yeah. Ches, I don't know if that's good enough. Now that's local aniyim. Aniyim who travel from place to place. He's not a local ani because again, there's a bigger chiyuv. We'll see soon to sustain the poor people of your town. So the ani who's traveling, he's not a local ani. He's a traveling ani. You can't give him less than kikra echad, one loaf of bread. That's the value of a punyan. So the Rambam gives a monetary chiyuv or monetary shir instead of saying the shir how big that would be. A punyan is half of a ma, and half of a ma is basically the same thing as a geda. So it's a 1/40th because there's 20 geda in a shekel. So it's 1/40th of a shekel. So you have to give a minimum of a loaf of bread the size of a punyan. When a time when wheat is being sold, 4 saw of grain of wheat for a sell, which is the same as a shekel. So when you sell, when you sell 4 saw of wheat for a shekel, you have to give bread that will cost a 1 punyan. So basically, that means 1 over 160. Of the price of 4 saw. So whatever the basically whatever that day the market value of 4 saw of wheat is, make a cheshbon of 1/160th of that price. So if it's $1.60, it's 1 penny, let's say, and that's the amount of bread you give him. Good, okay.
Read the note 21.
But yeah, good, fine. So it's 0.4 grams of contemporary silver. All right. We explain all different measurements in Hilchos Erevin and Shkolim and Erchin. Now that's as far as giving food for this traveling ani. If he wants to stay overnight, then you have to give him a mat to sleep on. The cast is sleeping tachas mashoshav and a pillow to put under his some kind of pillow to put under his head. The sham and the kidneys and oil and beans and all the basic things people need for midnight snack, I guess. If he stays over Shabbos, you have to meal for 3 meals. Because during the week, 2 meals is sufficient. The shem and the kidneys and oil and beans, the dog and the fish, the yarek and vegetables, these are all basic necessities and basic covered Shabbos. If you know him already, and this is the basic minimum, he tells you he's a wealthy person from another town. You don't know if he's telling the truth, and he's used to eating, Turkish caviar every day, but the vesnish. But if you know him, but he was a big gavir, then you have to give him based on his covet. That's why most communities have what's called a gabbat tzedakah, to be mishar. How much money do we have? How can we afford to give? And who do we investigate? This is all the right tests. This is your question, right? You asked before, Mr. Sefer, yeah? Ani does not want to accept tzedakah. What do you do? You trick him and you give it to him as matana. Or you give him as halva. He's alone. Not tzedakah, it's halva. You pay me back when you can. You never ask him for the halva back, and that's tzedakah. You have a wealthy person who starves himself. His eyes stingy about his own money. So he can't eat and drink for his own money, right? Maybe he has some delusions of poverty, and he thinks he's afraid that he'll lose everything tomorrow. But we don't pay attention to him. It's not our problem. He has to deal with it on his own.
You have this kind of people nowadays?
Yeah.
In America?
Sure, they go to therapy. Trust me. Good. Someone who is not does not want to give tzedakah. This fakir, you have a wealthy person doesn't want to give. What's the famous ma'aseh with the Rav? He says we solved half the problem of the poverty in town. All the aniyim are willing to take it. Now you have to convince the gevirim to give, right? That's the other half. So the halacha test was the aniyim don't want to take it. Solve that problem by tricking them, giving them a gift, when no one's looking. Yeah. Yud is misha and a person who doesn't want to get stuck is a miser. Ashita ma'af masharila, he gives very little, then less than he's is appropriate. Bezin kleiv na'isay, the bezin has a right to force him. Umakan na'isay, makas madas, to give him makas rabbanon, ashita mashamdu leitan, until they give him what they can assume he has the right to give, right? The erdul and chasav and funov, we can even go down to his property in front of him. Dafka, if he's not there, it's more problematic. If he's there and you're forcing him to give, so that you're forcing him to agree. But when he's not there, b'chalal, to take it from him, that's a little more tricky. But but in front of him, to force him to give, you could.
How much they take?
You take from him and make him give whatever he can afford to give, right? If he's Bill Gates, it's a lot of money. If it's another smaller giver, it's less money. Mashkin loves tzedakah. When it comes to tzedakah, you can take a mashkin. Let's say he says, "Fine, I'll give, but I don't have any cash right now." Fine, he take my car. That's okay. Even if it's Erev Shabbat, he says, "Yeah, I'll give after Shabbos. I don't have time now." That's not a taina, and you take a mashkin even Erev Shabbos. Yud Aleph. Adam Shoya, a person who is very soft-hearted. Yeah, right. A very generous person. Some people don't know how to say no. No matter what you tell them. He gives more tzedakah than he should. Right? This guy's over-generous. Or he pains himself if he gives to Gabayim because he's embarrassed not to say I can't afford to give. You have some people that want to appear wealthy. I must say he was wealthy taka once, but he's embarrassed to say he can't afford to contribute. Also, the Toved, he's not allowed to ask him tzedakah. The Gabay, a Gabay who embarrasses him, and he does ask tzedakah from him. In other words, either he makes him say no, he can't give. Also, because in other words, either the guy's going to say no and be embarrassed, and he's embarrassed he can't afford to give what he used to give, like the $1 million he used to give, or he's going to give and he can't afford to give. Now his wife and kids don't have what to eat. Yeah. Also, the menu, Hashem's going to extract punishment from him. Hashem says, I will visit my specification, my specific punishment on all those who are pressuring him. This is a pasuk in Yirmiyahu, Perek Lamed pasuk Chaf, apparently. Good base. So, ein peiskin stok al yishemim afilu lepidin shivuyim. You don't make the yishemim orphans who are under bar bas mitzvah, right? I mean, it's dafki ketanim. Rabbi Gordon, Avram Moshe Shver, still alive? Yes, slang a yarn. Yes. So he would say, "Be nice to me. I'm an orphan, right? The guy's 85 or whatever he is. So we're talking about the same over here who are under bar bas mitzvah. Even for pidyon shivuyim, which is very important, still you don't make them give tzedakah. Even though they're very wealthy, they inherited millions of dollars. If, however, the dayan establishes that he gives them an amount they have to give in order to give them fame, meaning that because that everyone knows they sponsored this person, so it's going to give them positive, standing in the community. Or the pashas actually, what it means is that people are going to know that they're wealthy. They're going to have a lot of good credit. They're going to have people do business with them because they know that they have money now. Because now they're the ones whose name is on top of the shul. So mutter, that's mutter. Yeah, based on what he says from the Bach over here, that's what it would seem, right? Because the Bach says that if they're already famous, everyone knows that they're wealthy. Dayan's not allowed to do that. So the horrible vort is to make them famous and wealthy, and people should know, and they should be able to, have good credit. Okay, when they do business when they're older. A gabbai stock is collecting from the people of the city, and he comes to the door to collect, that week's money, and the woman comes to the door, or the Eved comes to the door. You can take something small. He doesn't give it a definition of what small means. I don't know exactly what it means, but not a lot. Why? It's a chazaka if this Eved or the woman is giving a big donation, it's considered from somebody else, because women don't have their own money. It's not back then for sure, right? And Avadim don't have their own money. So it's stealing from someone else. Or the passion from the husband. So a person collecting tzedakah should not ask a woman, if husband's not home, I want more, right? It's not appropriate, because if she feels pressured, she's giving money that's not hers, right? The kamu mu'at shalehem. What exactly is the definition of mu'at? Again, based on the person's individual financial status. A person has a relative who's poor. He precedes every person. Everyone else. The aniyim who are in your house, meaning that they're shemach in your house, they're commonly found in your house, they're the ones who come more often. They come before all the other aniyim in town. The people in your city who are poor, they come before the other people in the city who are poor. Shemar says,
for your brothers who are poor, you're poor and the destitute in your land. So before you give to a magbis from whatever, you have to make sure your local community has what they need, right? And by the way, that applies even to Eretz Yisrael. Now, if your community doesn't need money and you have to choose, you live in Crown Heights, you have to choose between Russia and Eretz Yisrael comes first. Between other cities, but between your city takes precedence even over Eretz Yisrael. Okay, Yudalit. Mish, that's based on when he says, he quotes from the Shach and Shulchan Aruch over here. Okay. Yudalit. Mish alach b'scheda, someone who goes traveling. And back then, there were no credit cards. So if you out of town and you and you ran out of money, you were partially poor. At home, you have millions of dollars, but where you are, it's not going to help you. There's no credit cards, no electronic finances. So Mish halach b'scheda, someone who went out to do business. Upasko alav anshir ish halach sham tzedakah. Oh, so here he's not poor. But the new city where you went to, it was a custom. It was a minigan shas. If you did business in this town, every transaction like you have today, like business tax or whatever, every transaction, a percentage of what you made had to go to the local tzedakah. So you're doing business in this city. You made $100,000. There's a din that X amount has to go to the local tzedakah, even though you're not a local. Goes to the poor people of that city. That's if you're just one person in your town that's there. If there are a lot of people, in other words, let's say this community, more than 50% or whatever, a large amount, whatever that definition is, they all went to Vegas for a show. And they all did business over there. And they all made lots of money. And the Rabbanim in Vegas say, okay, our poor people need money. So then, and they pass, and they have to get tzedakah, 10% of whatever they made. Nice, they give it, when they come back home,
doesn't see which percentage.
So they bring it with them. And they have to have the poor people in their own city. In other words, they basically have to show the Gabbai tzedakah in their city that they set it aside, and then they come home to give it to the Aniyim in their own city, apparently. Because since in the first case,
they're giving twice then.
no, I think they just show it. So 1 second, because in the first case, only one person. So if this guy from Crown Heights gives the name of that city, so then it's not going to affect Aniyim over here majorly. It's only one person. But if it's a whole part of the community, and they give their earnings from that business deal to the tzedakah in that city over there, the locals where they come from are going to suffer. So therefore, they give it to them. Apparently, it sounds like how he's touching over here. They give it to the Aniyim of that city over there where they are. But those Gabayim, excuse me. They give it to the Gabayim tzedakah in that city. But those Gabayim don't spend. They have to hold on to it. And then when they're ready to go home, they give it back to them. They give it to Aniyim in their own city. Okay. If, however, you have in that city, you have a unique, the Rav, so to speak. They give it to him, and he gives it basically based on who sees fit. I'm not sure if it's talking about the city where they're traveling to or the city where they're from. But the point is that Rav is the one who we trust his judgment, how much to go to who. Okay. Tesvav. Someone who says, I'm talking about a case where he's on his deathbed, he passes away, which is why you can't ask him to clarify what he said. Give 200 zuz to the shul. And give a sefer Torah to the shul. So which shul should he give it to? He's in Florida on vacation when he says this, and he goes there half the use in Crown. So which shul did he mean? The local shul or the shul? So
investigate what he done.
Yeah, but let's say he divided his time between both shuls. So Yitnu lebeis knesset shul ragel, we give it to the shul where he's common. He go up. If he frequented 2 shuls, Yitnu l'shteim, you give it to both of them. In other words, you split it. You don't give the same amount to half. If it's a sefer Torah, obviously you divide the time between them. Someone who says give 200 dinarim from his wealth to the poor. Which poor? Yitnu la'aniya. You give it to that city that he is mechuyev to support. So again, whichever city he's more considered a resident of. If he's from one city but he passes away on a vacation in a different city, how should you give it to the city where he's mechuyev to support the city he's from? Okay. Good. Art School has an excellent